Hoffman Show. We're on the team at 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and of course streaming live on YouTube too at the team 980. Yesterday, you're part one of our conversation with Sam Fortier about his reporting on the Commanders and RFK and going kind of the setup to how we got to the point where we are right now, where City Council is the last hurdle for the team and the mayor's office to clear. They got it out of Congress. They came to a deal, and now they joined forces to get this thing through City Council and ultimately bring the Commanders back to the district. Part two of our conversation now on what that looks like, and then like literally what it looks like. Things like tailgating, things like PSLs. We get into it all. We'll put the full conversation up on YouTube and in our podcast feed. It'll also live in the Take Command feed as well, so wherever is most convenient for you if you want to listen to the full 45 minutes uninterrupted. But here you go, part two of our chat with Fortier on RFK.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
So let's dive into some of those arguments, if you will, because I think there's a lot of language here that gets real political. That is very, when I say political, it's politicians trying to sell constituents on this is the right thing for the city. This is the right thing. This is why what I'm fighting for, and thus why you should vote for me again, basically, right? But it does get into some value judgments of I, as a district citizen, I'm willing to pay some extra taxes to have the stadium at the RFK site because I want it in the city. That is not just for what it can do revenue-wise. That's not economic reasons. I'm not an economist. I don't have to drive as far. I like having it close by. I like having it metro accessible. So I personally am willing to pay that convenience and split the cost with my fellow citizens for not having the stadium in certainly Prince William County, but even in Landover. So there's that side of it. But then there's also kind of the claims that get made here on some of the financing where they're saying, we won't have to introduce any new taxes because they're extending the already existing ballpark tax, or they're going to apply that same principle to the stadium, and some of the money is actually going to be generated from 2030 to 2032 once the stadium is open. And then you say, okay, well, that money is then paying back the rest of the bonds, and then the profits can start after that. The other big part is that, and this is where I don't know if you know the answer, but I would want to ask a Charles Allen, a Phil Mendelssohn, these types of questions is the argument for not building the stadium is you don't need a stadium to anchor a neighborhood, which is absolutely correct. And every economist will tell you it is better. If you want better return for investment, build more housing, build grocery stores, build shops, build all those things, not a football stadium. But if you don't have a football stadium, you still have to build the roads, update the metro, do all the infrastructure work that the money that is the public money would have to pay for. So do we have any idea what an alternate plan would look like and how much that would cost taxpayers? Because I think that is a relevant thing because they're trying to make it seem like, if you build a stadium, it's going to be $1 billion of public money. And if you build no stadium, it's $0 of public money. But I want to know how all this stuff's getting done without the Commanders' $2.7 billion, even if a lot of that might go to the stadium, because that is a relevant figure and fact here as well.
Totally. And that's something that we don't have a lot of clarity on because the mayor and the council have not put forward, which makes a lot of sense because this is plan A.
Right.
And they're going to go hard on plan A until, it gets voted down or it gets approved. But we don't have a great sense of if the stadium was not there, how many more housing units would there be? How much public investment would it cost? People always talk about the Wharf 2.0 basically, or that's the model they want to use. And I think that, there's very legitimate concerns talking to my Metro colleagues about when you go to the Wharf, there's some affordable housing, there's some luxury housing, and there's very little in the middle.
Yeah.
So when they promise, okay,
you also pay
the RFK
$8,000 to park.
Right. The RFK site, the city says is 30% is going to be affordable housing. But then how do you make sure that it's not 30% affordable and 70% luxury? Right. I think that that's creating not just a community, but a well-balanced community. I think that's going to be something that the mayor's office is going to have to figure out too. And it's important to acknowledge that when they go public, that does not mean they have every single detail ironed out. The Commanders, for example, have not even hired an architect yet. But you have to go public because if you're going to have this many people involved, it's going to come out. And so you want to set the terms of, hey, this is how we want to present our idea. But basically, we know the big numbers, 2.7 private investment, just over $1 billion public investment. Here's where the sites are. Here's who would control these different districts. But we don't have all of the details yet. And that's something that, like, I think council members and citizens have a real opportunity to shape going forward is, hey, what demands or what concessions can we get them to accept as they hammer out the finer points of this deal?
The other big thing that I find fascinating, I think you're a great person to ask about this, is the idea that this land is probably still locked up in Congress without the lobbying effort of the Commanders in the NFL. And while Josh Harris has said the right thing, which is we think this land is best in DC's hands and letting DC decide what to do with it, they're not going to be this involved if they didn't think they were getting a stadium out of the deal. If they put in that much work and that much money to lobby and the effort and the time and all that kind of stuff, and then it's like, all right, now we got the land. You guys have fun with it. He's not going to be psyched about that. Do you think that argument will carry any water with any of the city council folks who are currently currently undecided on this? That, like, you don't have this decision to make if it's without the Commanders. This land would still be locked up and rotting away for at least another year, and like it has been for most of the last 30 years.
I think that was one of Maryland's main arguments when they were raising objections to the RFK bill in the first place. They said, hey, like, you're doing this to get a football stadium, and we don't believe that using taxpayer funds in a football stadium, or we don't believe that, giving the Commanders free federal land, they're paying $1 in rent. We don't think that is like a fair competition. That was like their main counter argument. And so when you would ask Charles Allen or any of these council members, like, they love that DC has control of the land. No one wants RFK Stadium as it's been for the last 20 years.
Right.
But it's all about taxpayer funding. So is there any argument to, like, the Commanders helped you out? I would say if I'm a council member and you ask me that question, I'm like, it's very nice that the Commanders, like, were interested in helping the city, be at the table, and the NFL was interested in helping the city be at the table in this competition. But that does not mean that we have to then give you the land for $1 rent and then give you development rights, or that we have to contribute more than $1 billion of taxpayer money. And that's a totally legitimate, defensible position for a council member to take. And if I'm Mayor Bowser, it's like, they helped me, I'm going to, work with them on a deal.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so I feel like that's most of kind of the hot button things that have been discussed the last couple of days. What else is interesting to you about this moving forward?
The whip count. Like, are they going to pass this deal is fascinating to me, because it's fascinating to me because at the pep rally announcement, there were 4 council members, and right. I can go into those if you'd like, but there were 4 council members, and then there are 3 pretty vocal public, we do not believe in either A, a stadium, or B, taxpayer funds for a stadium, who have come out against it. And right now there are 12 members on the city council. It's 13 members, but Ward 8 is vacant. So you're going to have to get, there's 4 for, 3 against. That leaves 5 people still still sitting, and you have to figure out, how do we get 3 of those people? And actually, the exclusive negotiating window, as outlined in this term deal, is it ends the same day that the special election for the Ward 8 council seat is. So you're really going forward with, hey, there are 12 people, 4 are with us, 3 are against us. Can we get 3 of the 5? And that, to me, is a fascinating question, because it's going to probably determine, like, can they build the stadium or not?
Right. And we know that when Nats Park was built, for instance, there was a Nats baseball academy in Ward 7 that had to get built. I imagine there's going to be things like that. Like, what happens in other places that, whether it's support for youth football programs or Lord knows what else. Hey, all right, Events DC is involved. We need a new parking garage. Like, there's going to be stuff that gets thrown in here to make these people happy. Do we have any idea of those 5, like, what some of their demands might be? Or is there any particular 1 or 2 that are really interesting to you of what you think they might want based off their past histories or previous statements?
So the other 5 council members that we're talking about here, Robert White, Christina Henderson, Matthew Frumman in Ward 3, Zachary Parker in Ward 5, and Janice Lewis George in Ward 4. Like, those 5 people, I don't know exactly what their demands will be. They're playing pretty coy, because right now in this negotiating period, the vaguer you are, the more commitments you try to get. I mean, this is a thing that, like, will be impressed by the timeline or improved by the timeline. And so right now, like, we just don't know where they're going to be. But I got to tell you, Craig, like, one political phrase that surprises me every time I hear it, even though I've been writing political adjacent or political stories or working on them with my colleagues for 3 years now, is like, there's a term, pound of flesh. They always talk about, like, this council member has to get their pound of flesh.
Yes.
And it's so funny to me because it's like, people talk about, football can be so brutal and violent and gladiatorial. And it's like, okay, well, this congressman is objecting to this deal so he can get his pound of flesh. It was so popular when we were talking about the Montana senator, Steve Daines. It was like, oh, he's trying to get his pound of flesh. And to me, it always is like, oh, like that's a wild way to phrase that.
They just want the thing they can put in the ad
Totally.
to get reelected. And that's like, ultimately, that's what this is about for so many of these people is like, yeah, they run for a reason. Yeah, some of them are in it for public service. Hopefully all of them are in it for true public service and they'll have the public's best interest at heart, but they also want to keep their jobs. And like so much of politics and what gets done is about that. Who am I willing to piss off? Who am I terrified of pissing off because they might fund a primary challenge or this or that it's all very silly. But you'd hope that you actually get what is best for the district. And that's what they're all going to say, right? They're all going to be like, I will do a deal that's good for the district. And Mayor Bowser's like, well, we want the win-win-win. We want what's good for the district, good for the commanders, all this stuff. And it's just like, my question is like, what is good? And I think that's the thing that is hard. And, you got all the marketing materials, if you will, here. And one of those pages says, oh, there'll be no new taxes and no new that. And I saw there was the polling yesterday. JP Finley tweeted out the polling from, it's like Hart Research or something like that, which
Team funded.
Yeah. As a team, it based off the percentages and the way the questions were written, very team funded, which fine. And it's like, do you support a stadium at RFK if there's no new taxes? And it's like, 85% yes. And it's like, no kidding. But that's not the right question. The question is like, can they actually do that? And I think part of the other question I have, Sam, is like, if they can't, who foots the bill for the extra? Because the reality is like, this is getting into national politics, but it is what it is. There's no way to separate these things. Like Trump's tariffs could massively affect the cost of a stadium. Like if you're talking about construction materials right now, and shipping costs and all these things, like we truly don't know based off what deals he cuts with what countries and where the steel and the concrete and all of these things that go, the microchips for all the technology. Like they're anticipating the stadium to cost X amount. What if the stadium costs 2X? And like who pays for that? Like those details are really important too.
Two things there. One, Terry Pagula owns the Buffalo Bills, and the Bills right now are building an approximately 65,000 seat stadium. And he actually addressed this the other day. He said it's actually more expensive to build this stadium than we thought, and that's a huge deal. I don't want to be too out of my depth talking about what Trump's tariffs will mean, but I asked Josh Harris who will pay for the cost overruns of this project if there are any. And he said the Commanders, 100%. So
okay.
That is a pretty clear-cut answer where if the tariffs or something else affect the cost of goods,
there could be a million different,
the Commanders are going to cover it.
Yeah, I mean, just the natural way these things go. What was the last construction project you heard of that came in on budget? Now, because of the current economic situation and the trends and the predictions, most economists and most experts agree that like this is something that is going to affect it. But I'm curious how that was why I think that's like a really important caveat is it, one, it's construction. It's probably going to come in overpriced. Two, the way construction costs are headed right now, if they design this thing, in the last 3 months, what the construction costs are a year from now are totally unpredictable. Maybe they're better. Maybe they're not. We don't know. But understanding that kind of stuff is really important because so often in these things, it's like you get the private pledge and then the public has to foot the rest of the bill. If we know that the Commanders are doing it going in, I think that's great. And it also speaks to what I feel like is almost a unique facet of this project too. They're not just going to build the stadium. Like they are responsible for the development of most of the stuff around the stadium, which actually, I don't want to say like, I don't know. I don't know how good the city is at building stuff. I don't know like who did the wharf and whatever else, but I do kind of trust the Harris group to do whatever they do well. And I am fascinated to see how they develop these different districts around the stadium, as Sam is holding up here.
Yeah, people can't really see it.
The stadium district, the riverfront district, the recreation district, and like what kind of stuff goes here and how Commanders branded it is if Josh Harris and the Harris Group are, the main constructors of the rest of this 180 acres.
I think that's a trend you're seeing across sports right now. Everybody loves to talk about the Battery in Atlanta with the Braves, but like Mark Cuban, when he sold the Mavericks, like said he understood the edge in the early 2000s. He understood media rights deals were going to drive an explosion in franchise valuations, which is why he felt like the Mavericks were a good bet. He sold it because he felt like he did not understand the next edge, which is real estate development. And if you go down, it's like the Washington Commanders, the Atlanta Braves, the North Carolina State University Wolfpack, like want to build these ancillary development projects. You want to control real estate in the same way that Stan Kroenke did with the Rams. Like there are so many of these projects, I think, at this point that are driving, like the land acquisition and development is driving the franchise valuations now as much as anything. And so, what can Josh Harris do? I mean, they want to put bars, they want to put restaurants, they want to put, mixed use development at retail to like drive, valuations up. And I think it also is a part of tailgating, which we can talk about. But to me, like they have in their orbit people that know how to do those things.
Yeah.
That was going to be a part of the Ted Leonsis deal in Virginia. So to me, land development goes part and parcel with owning a sports team these days.
It's the old McDonald's theory. McDonald's not a restaurant; they're a real estate company.
Exactly. Like I don't know if you saw The Founder, the movie.
Yeah, that's exactly.
But that's the scene. Like when BJ Novak is like, you don't know what business you're in. I really think that's what's happening in sports right now.
Which is interesting too, because I think Keim asked Harris about this, of like the investment side of it, and he was basically like, look, we want to do it right by the fans, right by the team, right by the city, and like if it works out for us in the long term financial, like this is not the best way I could invest this money if I was purely doing this as an investment. But also being a landlord is a pretty good deal in the long run.
I was gonna say Josh Harris is a smart guy.
Yeah, I feel like he's like this is a way, but also if you're gonna put up $2.7 billion, like I'm not like, hey, go billionaires by any stretch of the imagination.
Hold on. I'm going to clip that just so you know. I'm going to clip you going, go billionaires, and that's it.
You're going to cut off the I am not right before
Exactly. It's like
all right, that was a great time to have Sam. Get
Joe,
the hell out of my
from,
get
the
the hell out of my house. No, but I'm certainly not go billionaires. But if you're going to put up $2.7 billion, it's not like you're not allowed to make any of that back.
Yeah, I mean, when you get 20 people in your ownership group to spend $6.05 billion on this thing, like people want their money back. Like, Mitch Rales, Mark Gein, Josh Harris all have an emotional connection to this team doing right by the city. But like, there are people who don't have that emotional connection who see this as a business opportunity. And it's like, where's my ROI?
Yeah, well, the franchise value is going to go up, and that maybe they cash out after some of this. We'll see. But it's definitely going to be interesting to follow some of the pieces. Speaking of one of the other owners, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this part up. Magic Johnson, not only an owner with the Commanders, he's an owner with the Washington Spirit as well. And this actually came out in a New York Times, or I guess the Athletic piece today, that Jason Wright, who, of course, former Commanders president, mentioned to the author of this article something that, frankly, I had talked with Jason about, over the course of the last couple of years, which is that they have been in contact with the Spirit about, do we want to partner here? Is there an opportunity to do something similar to the Star in Frisco, where it's like, can we build a 10,000 seat stadium that is a practice facility for the Commanders and maybe an actual stadium for high school football or the Spirit or both of those entities? And I think now with the way the Spirit are rolling, 10,000 is way too small because they're selling out Audi Field on a regular basis. But I did see in I think it was whatever the sheet is over here with all the logos on it of the different things they could do. Like the Spirit's logo is in there. And they talk about, opportunities for women's sports. They talk about some of the other things they want to do with this space besides just having the Commander Stadium there and the kind of non-sports stuff. Do we know at this point what other teams may want to get involved? What other sports facilities, professional sports facilities, could go here? Or do we think that it's going to be limited to the Commanders? It is going to be them, stadium only, no practice facility, no nothing else. And then ultimately the rest of the development goes to the mixed use or the other mix of uses that Mayor Bowser and the council want to see out of this.
So I was just looking through the term sheet because in there it does say with the potential for a women's soccer team. It doesn't say the Spirit by name, but like you said, the Spirit logo is on there. I think the Spirit moving there for a practice facility or something or games, like that's definitely on the table. And
because I think they would love, even if it's just a practice facility, right? They're playing at Audi. Their players have to drive in an hour to games compared to they're in Ashburn. And like, it would not. Michelle Kang is a smart businesswoman, the owner of the Spirit. If you want to know more about that, go look at how she became the majority owner of that team. She basically pulled a coup, which was badass. But like bringing in Magic as someone, not as just as a big name and someone with some serious cash, but someone who is also a part owner of the biggest team in town, is in the middle of stadium negotiations. That to me felt like a shrewd move at the time. That is a compliment, and I would not be surprised to see them. And I'm also curious if there's anybody else who gets involved.
I think that they're definitely open to having more sports teams involved. But right now, Josh Harris said that he doesn't anticipate moving the team's practice facility from Ashburn. He said that they like it out there. And he said there's no plans to move the team's corporate headquarters from College Park. That could change. I know that, Tom Sherwood, who you brought up, has been, critical of teams that, or corporations that quote unquote play in the district, but they have their corporate headquarters where it's more tax advantageous in Virginia or Maryland. But Josh said basically that they like having touch points in all three jurisdictions: stadium, DC, corporate headquarters, Maryland, practice facility, Virginia. It seems to me like the practice facility will stay in Ashburn, at least for the foreseeable future, which is surprising to me because that land is so valuable for data centers. I thought they were going to cash out, but it does not appear to be that way.
Well, they've set up the paperwork if they want to change their mind.
They have, yes,
and
totally.
That is something that's in the last year and a half that they got the right licenses or whatever to make sure that they can build the data centers out there in Ashburn where that land is stupid valuable.
Right. And so to me, like, there's a lot of questions I think that we're going to have going forward. I think they want to figure out, okay, let's get this thing passed. Let's figure out where we're going to be. And then, okay, maybe we do something like the Star. But, I mean, the Star in Frisco, Texas, they have a lot more land around there than DC does. So it would be, I think, more logistically difficult.
It would move them out of Virginia. But in a lot of ways, I think the smartest place to put the new practice facility would be in Landover.
Yeah.
Like, PG County is the wealthiest black county in America per capita. And so if you all of a sudden say, all right, hey, we're trying to recruit players and like you can live amongst your peers in a majority black league out there in PG County, they have 200 acres. Certainly Maryland they want to use that land for what's best for the community, but also if they can welcome or keep the Commanders in a pretty large presence, it's also, again, a lot closer to the city.
They still own that land, so it would just be repurposing things that they already own.
Right. They don't have to do any kind of purchase, so they could sell Ashburn, make a ton of cash, reinvest that cash in. And the thing is, on the Ashburn site, as you well know, as someone who still has to go there on a more regular basis than I do, that place, they don't have the room to expand. Like, they've already knocked down almost all the walls inside that they can. There's not really room because of the way like the hills are shaped for extensions on that. They'd run out of either parking or practice space. So if they want to have a modern NFL practice facility, they need to build a new one. And to me, it would make sense to say, hey, giant tech companies that are flush with cash and running out of space in Ashburn, who's the highest bidder? Okay, you own this now. We're going to Landover. And so I don't know what that means for their relationship with Virginia, because like you said, or like you referenced, Josh said they like having it in all three, but that would not surprise me long term if that was a play.
No, it makes a lot of business sense for some good business people. And I would say the other concern or question that I have about how the team approaches this, if they do ultimately get approval, is tailgating. I know that's been a thing that people have been really concerned about. They have 22,000 parking spaces at Northwest Stadium. They're going to go down to approximately 8 in DC. And as you pointed out, like, they say that they'll start with a little surface parking, but it'll all eventually be in structures. I asked a Commanders official, hey, how is this going to work? Like, will you be able to tailgate if you're there? And this person basically said, look, like, we will figure out how to make it a tailgating experience in a parking structure. I don't know. They did not have details on what that would look like. But if that doesn't work out, they can go to the area, the stadium district we're going to develop right in front of the area, and they can tailgate there, which obviously would be in team-developed, team-leased places. So what does tailgating look like? How do people get to the park, especially if there's only going to be 8,000 parking spaces? You're going to have to rely on Metro, ride share, bikes, things like that. But it's I think the logistics of this site, it's a totally fair and open question because that's the inherent cost of centrality and getting the emotional spot that appeals to people.
I mean, this is anything in a city. Like if you want space, you got to go out to the suburbs. If you want centrality, you want convenience, like you're going to have to deal with some other stuff. It's why, living in the city and paying for parking every month in my own residence, like it's not great. Like it just is a part of it though. If you want to have that convenience, you're going to have to pay for it. And so I get it. And there's some people that care a lot about the tailgating, but at some point you have to make choices. And I think that's really a good place to end is like over the next 3 months, a lot of people are going to have to make choices. And for city council members, it's going to be, do you want the stadium here or not? And I think ultimately that is the leverage that the Commanders have. Of course, the city council members have their vote as their leverage on the other side. Anything else you want to add on the tail end here to wrap up?
One thing I've heard a lot from fans that I want to add is about personal seat licenses, PSLs, which are going to make tickets more expensive. I think Buffalo is actually, again, a great example of this because in Buffalo, they're building a similar size structure, and they just introduced PSLs for the first time. About 20 of the 32 teams have them. Josh Harris said PSLs are just a part of building a new stadium in the NFL because it's a big upfront infusion of cash. And the way PSLs work, it's like buying a ticket to get into a store to then buy something. You're going to have to pay for the right to buy your seat if you're a season ticket holder. And for the lower, end tickets for the common fan, in Buffalo, you buy a 30-year PSL, and it's between $2,500 and $8,000. If you want to
per
more
year.
No,
Or just
it's
once?
you buy it for 30 years. So you have a 30-year PSL,
Okay.
2,500 to 8,000, and if you want a premium seat or a club seat, it's between 15K and 50K.
Wow. Okay.
But if you're a fan who sits in the nosebleeds, but you love your seat and you've always had it, if you pay in that range, you will have the right to buy your season tickets for the next X amount of years. We don't know what the Commanders' cost will be. We don't know what the Commanders' terms will be in terms of the length of the deal. But that is something that I've heard from fans because it's like, hey, like I've loved this team. I've been through the thick and thin. Can I now transfer my seats to the new stadium because like I was here when y'all were down and now y'all are up and I want to still be there.
Right.
So I think that's a question that I have. And I asked Josh Harris about the affordability and he was like, look, I totally understand PSLs are a big thing people talk about. We will have an affordable game day experience even in the context of PSLs. And to me, the question is, okay, what are the ticket prices going to be? What are the concessions going to be? Atlanta, I think, has been a leader in the NFL in making concessions affordable. Obviously, this stadium is such a big opportunity for the team and to make money and to get their return on investment. But will they keep fans along for the ride, especially the fans that were there when they were down? Legacy fans that have had tickets since Griffith Stadium, a lot of, some people definitely have been there that long. That's what I'm going to be watching going forward is does he follow through and put his money where his mouth is?
So far, so good. And basically everything Josh Harris has done for the Commanders. This is going to be a big test, though. Sam Fortier will be covering it in the Washington Post. If you read it, you get his T-shirt. It's not true.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
All right, that was Fortier with us. He was wearing a Washington Post T-shirt, which is why I said that there at the end. Again, if you want the full uninterrupted conversation, we'll put it up in our podcast feed and on YouTube at Craig Hoffman at the Team 980.